Hi. Testing. Hello? What? Hi, my name is Rizwan. Is this working? Is this working now? Okay. Hi, everyone. The time is now 4 p.m. and we're going to start session 4, a panel discussion on birth registration and unique identification. It's chaired by MD Nozrul Islam, former cabinet secretary and member of the National Human Rights Commission. During the panel, we'll be hearing from Nutan Farah Haq of BIGD, Dean Malabika Sarkar of the Grant School of Public Health at Breck University, Ali Akbar Ashrafi of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Palash Kanti Bala, Registrar General for Birth and Death Registration, and AK Sabir Mahbub, Chairman of DevNet Limited. If all our panelists can come to the stage and take their seats. Just a technical error. The position for our chair was former Secretary of the Cabinet Division. And another technical note, if everyone in the audience and our participants can remember to speak into the mic clearly and loudly so that we can pick up the audio on our Zoom call.
Distinguished participants, panelists, the presenter and of the session. It is my pleasure to welcome you in this session. The panel discussion on birth registration and unique identification. It is the 4th session of the ongoing 3-day-long conference titled Digitalization and New Frontiers of Service Delivery, Opportunities and Challenges. We would like to thank the organizers for including this session in the conference, which is very timely and very much related to public interest. Birth and Death Registration Act in our country is around 150 years old. The first act was the Bengal Birth and Death Registration Act 1873. Later, the act was repealed and the Birth and Death Registration Act 2004 was enacted. In 2013, the act was amended. The latest rule was introduced in 2018. Still, there are some areas in the Act and the rules which need revision and updating. We expect we expect thoughtful opinions from the discussant, which will be helpful for amending the Act and rules. Actually, a process is going on for revision of the Act and rules. Very recently, we have seen in the newspapers a lot of news were there to for public sufferings and other issues. So government took note of that and has taken a step for amending the rules and Act. So in this regard, I think it's very much relevant. It will be very helpful if we can get some opinion from here. First of all, we may start with a short presentation. The presentation will be presented by Ms. Nuton Farah Haq. A small presentation, but it will help for the discussant, and there will be it will ignite the discussion for their discussion. Please start your discussion presentation, Farah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? So welcome to the last session of the first day of this conference. And before starting the panel discussion, I, Nutan Farahak, with the help of my colleague Tahmid bin Mahmoud, would like to give a brief overview of the current scenario of birth registration in Bangladesh and discuss the challenges from a citizen's perspective. In this presentation, we are going to highlight the major issues which have been repetitively coming up in news articles and rare literature over the last year. And we are looking forward to the panel discussion on this afterwards. Okay. So starting with the identity of individual, what it means. Identity refers to the unique set of features and characteristics of a person, including his or her name and her biographical characteristics. Now, to enable all people to access services and exercise their rights, it is crucial to assure an official form of identification. Each person needs to be identified and registered through civil registration process by maintaining authentication of identity and deduplication to avoid double or multiple counting. Identifying each person requires three main things. One is a unique ID number. The second one is the biometric information to deduplicate. And another is a data set or a set of databases that should be managed and maintained to act as one source of truth. Unique identification number for individual become more critical for Bangladesh as it rapidly aims for completely digitalized governance. It will become more difficult to avail of any essential services through a wholly digitalized governance system without establishing a comprehensively functional system that uniquely identifies each of its citizens. As shown in the slide, there are multiple identification numbers in practice in Bangladesh. These are only the major 12. Unfortunately, the existing multiple citizen databases and ID numbers have their own specific limit and limited scope and use. Within the civil registration system, birth registration is the starting point for establishing an individual's identity. And when we're talking about birth registration, a society first acknowledge a child's existence and identity through birth registration. The right to be recognized as a person before the law is a critical step in ensuring lifelong protection and is a prerequisite for exercising all other rights. Functional registers such as NID, voter ID, passports, etc. tend to contain subsets of the population, such as NID covers citizens only above the age of 15. So they can never be a substitute for an interconnected and effectively managed civil registration system. In Bangladesh, birth certificates have been mandated for 18 major government services, including passports, bank account opening, marriage registration, school admission, and land registration. As new rules have been implemented under the Births and Deaths Registration Act 2004, from earlier 2021, the concerned authorities, educators, and applicants have identified several issues that have complicated the entire birth registration process. Now let's look at the major issues one by one. The first issue that I want to draw attention to is about the complications emerging due to the new rule of mandating parents' birth registration to register. The online form allows applicant to enter only the parents' birth registration numbers, and then the system fetches the associated NID information. The question here is, why did the system not allow entering the NID number of the parents? Well, as we know, the enrollment of citizens about 15 years of age in the NID database has become nearly universal. There are biometric data for 100 million citizens in the database, according to the 2017 World Bank report. Hence, the NID is more substantial evidence of their identity due to the biometric information associated with it. And there are more people with the unique ID than birth registration numbers. Due to mandating the parents' birth registration number, the current birth registration information is opening up a series of new processes involving parents' registration. So the question is, what could be the reason for not simplifying this process? The second issue I want to draw attention to is about standard language protocol. So say for an example, if the parent certificate are in English, the child will get the certificate in English. And if Bangla, then the child will get the certificate in Bangla. But when the parent's certificate is in different language, one in Bangla and one in English, then the child will not be able to apply for the certificate until one of the parents change their certificate into the other's language. So here the question is, why has a standard language protocol not been taken yet? And if the birth registration system allows generating valid certificate in both languages, why complicate the process by not accepting both? The third issue I want to draw attention to is about the overcharging. According to the Birth Registration Act Amendment 2018, the BRIS system should have the arrangement to collect fees online. If that's been implemented, the system should have produced a money receipt, which could have limited the exercise of overcharge. But again, the current birth registration system has a server connectivity issue, which takes much longer time to complete an application and sometimes several attempts. A possible reason behind overcharging is when demand is high. For an example, when the government declares to vaccinate students, I'm talking about COVID-19 vaccines, age 12 to 18 using birth registration number, people rush to apply for birth registration. And people reported from multiple unions that the cost is varying from 100 to sometimes 500 taka. This leads to our next issue, the server connectivity issue. The issue has been becoming up almost every report and news article over and over again. We have conducted a simple speed test. It's a loading time of 3 websites to evaluate the speed and performance of the websites on real browser and devices. And as you can see, our current birth and death registration system website scored 3 for mobile device and 1 for desktop, while Surakha scored 30 and 10. An Indian citizen online website scored 64 and 29. The question is, why is the central server connectivity issue not solved yet? The score is ranging from 0 to 100. The next issue is the scope of duplication. Birth registration system server cannot identify duplicate entries as no cross-referencing software tool is integrated. As a result, the practice of having duplicated certificate is at large nationwide. People hesitate to register, that is, tie themselves to a single year of birth because they want the freedom to choose their age within a band, though, while entering the job market. Sometimes this led to issuing multiple birth registration certificate having different birth dates. And this leads to our next question. Does the absence of a proper and strict duplication detection and management protocol keep the scope of issuing multiple certificate with different dates of birth against one individual? The next issue is the information correction process. Unfortunately, this process is not a part of the digitalized system yet. People need to run around offices in the upajelas or districts for corrections, from regional to DC offices. The Office of the Registrar General said it received at least 12 million applications for correction of birth certificates as of now. As many as 7.5 million of those were filed in 2021. In total, more than 4.3 million applications are pending across the country. Now, the question is, why has the birth certificate correction not been incorporated in the digitalized system? The next issue I want to draw attention to is the most vulnerable ones who are missing out. A notable segment of the population that falls out of the birth registration process is street children. These children do not have any permanent address and sometimes do not know the names of either or both parents, all of which are necessary to obtain birth certificate. On the contrary, the 2018 declaration regarding the birth and death registration states that the births of fatherless or orphan children can be registered. A registrar cannot refuse to register of births or deaths due to lack of such information. In cases where information is indeed missing or unknown, it could simply be filled as unavailable to complete the registration. However, the question here is, why has this provision not been incorporated into the current digital system to accommodate the registration of street children? The current system additionally requires one to provide both parents' birth registration number, which the street children can never provide. The website has seen multiple revisions and updates till now. The question is, what caused the delayed addressing of this issue? The next major issue is the low number of birth registration within the first 45 days of the birth. Hence, it's crucial to discuss the challenges to early birth registration. In a recent survey by BIGD, we have found that 91% of the households within our sample with children aged 0 to 90 days did not register yet. Among the 9% who did register, around 8% reported that they did it due to the local health workers' influence. The rest of the households reported they already knew the importance of birth registration. On the other hand, UNICEF data shows that only 37% of the children under the age of 5 are currently registered. As a result, 10 million Bangladeshi children below the age of 5 do not exist officially. The question is, what are the barriers to early birth registration? And the last issue that I want to draw attention to is the missing link between birth registration system with the mass immunization program. Here the questions are, why is the role of health workers and medical institutes within the birth registration system still minimal? What are the reasons behind not directly involving them as registrars? In the past, the immunization program took more precedence than birth registration. Hence, even though newborn vaccination cards had allocated space for the birth registration number, it was not required. At present, everyone in Bangladesh has successfully been made aware of the importance of the mass immunization program, which enables the enforcement of birth registration as per the Births and Deaths Registration Act of 2004 during a child's first immunization. But in recent times, the government started vaccinating children aged 12 to 18 with COVID-19 vaccines using the birth registration numbers. So naturally, a question arises. Why was the requirement of birth registration not mandated in the mass vaccination programs? Where when a vaccination card is first issued against a newborn child, is there any scope for the automation of the registration process using digital solutions by accessing the central server during the first encounter of a child with the health service provider? So here are the references of the contents which helped us to prepare this brief. And thank you for your patience.
Thank you. A short presentation with 9 very big questions. I think our registered general is here. He has some sort of answers to all these questions. So I think he will be answering this. And we have today 4 panelists. Ms. Malobika Sarkar, Professor and Acting Dean of BRAC James P. Grant School of Public Health, BRAC University. And then Dr. Ali Akbar Ashrafi, Dr. Shah Ali Akbar Ashrafi, Chief of Health Information Unit, MIS, DJSS, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Mr. Palash Kanti Bala, Registrar General, Office of the Registrar General. And Mr. A.K. Sabbir Mahbub, co-founder and chairman, DevNet Limited. So each of our panelists will be having 10 minutes each. I would like to request Malobika Sarkar first to react on this presentation, or please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I will kind of shortly, briefly discuss about the why do we need unique ID, because it's fundamental for 3 policy implications. So the first one, I start with the Sustainable Development Goal. So one of the major commitments from our Prime Minister and the government is universal health coverage. And without a denominator, universal health coverage cannot be counted. So only when we will have the unique ID of a child, then it's possible to know all the services or any data related to whether the child mortality, EPI vaccination, that like pneumonia, diarrhea, to show the what exactly the coverage is. So that's number one, very important, the unique ID. The second is the service. If we look at the EPI, that Gavi has recently launched a huge project on how to reach the 0-dose children. That means the children who have not received immunization, the vaccination. And one of the major reasons is because those children were not registered. But also important is that if you look at the Bangladesh EPI data that we are very proud of, that our EPI coverage is 90%, but the bitter truth is that coverage is a based on the cross-sectional data. So when we have the EPI coverage that like DPT dose 1, that's the cross-sectional 90%. Then the DPT2, maybe 85%. DPT3, the measles. But we cannot exactly say that what percentage of the children received all those 3 doses and then the measles first and second doses. Because without unique ID, that type of longitudinal data or the cohort data cannot be measured. So we are not sure that if we really measure the EPA coverage based on the unique or cohort data, whether we will kind of claim that our coverage is 90 or 95%. The third important area is the resource. So if we have the unique ID, we will exactly know who are those children. And if we want to ensure the equity, the resource allocation can be done based on that data, because that data will tell us the number of the children, even if they're mobile or they come to urban slum or become the street children, we can track them. So that's one is that the resource allocation. The second is the reduce the wastage of resource, because the duplication of the services or the vaccination, the duplication of the vaccination will not be possible if we have the unique ID and the child carry that. There's a lot of discussion about linking the parents' ID, but we know that it's not possible. That always linking, and the child have to wait until 18 years to get the NID, and then kind of with the main part of the mainstream population in Bangladesh. So I just want to kind of finish saying that unless we ensure the unique ID, there are a lot of initiative and the discussion and the dream that we are discussing, that will not be possible. So the fundamental backbone of providing a good service, knowing that what is our coverage, making no child leave behind or left behind, the only way you can do that when we can ensure that every single child who was born in Bangladesh has a unique ID, the birth registration, and also receive the birth certificate, because these two are different. In South Asia, globally, the 166 million are not registered for birth, and 53 million in South Asia. And 13 million children in South Asia, those who have been registered but did not receive the birth certificate. So you also need to be mindful about that unique ID, registering the child for the birth registration, and making sure that they can receive the birth certificate before they start the school or go to the health facility for any type of clinical care or preventive care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to request Mr. Ali Akbar Shafi to speak on the issue.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Basically, government gave a mandate to UN Escape that every child will be registered within a year, is near about 100% by 2024. This is the one of the goal of the CRVS decade. You know that we are passing the CRVS decade that starts in 2015 and it will end in the 2024. So there's a there are three goals, and one of the major goal is the birth registration. But in our Birth and Death Registration Act and rules, their birth and death should be registered within the 45 days of the event. But still we are in the lag behind. So in the 2016, we take an initiative for integration with the health systems to the local register government, local government division, especially the union parishads at the rural level. So that is called the Kaligons model. In the act and rules, there's clearly mentioned that the event should be notified by the health systems, whether it is born at the facility, then health facility or facility authority will notify. And simultaneously, if it is happened in the community, then community, our health workers and family welfare assistant, they will notify to the local register office. That is the union parishad. So we identified the process, and accordingly, we link the health system with the local register office. That is the union parishad. And accordingly, we have seen that it works very well at the rural settings. But problem is at the urban settings. This is the huge problem. So there is no linkage between the health system except the facility with the local register office. And accordingly, our health workers, they are notifying the event to the local register. But problem is that the register office basically, due to their some requirement mentioned in the laws and the act, that the rural people, they are not producing that papers at the same time or accordingly. So there is a gap between the notification and the registration, completion of the registration and the certification. So accordingly, we introduced some clause in our immunization system. If you see the new immunization card, there's clearly mentioned that the birth registration number, there's a space for the birth registration number. where our health workers, they are mentioning the 17 digit of the birth registration. This is the one steps for strengthening the birth registration. And not only that, for the monthly report, where from the field and the especially for the immunization program, they are sending that how much birth registration application form they are helping for filled up the form, and accordingly how much birth registration certificate they received during the next visit of the immunization, they are sending that report to the EPI headquarters. So this process basically enhance the birth registration at the field level. But still we are still we are behind for the notification sending from the facility to the local registration office or the birth and death issue information systems. Still we are working from our management information system department of the directors of the health services. Still we are working on it, and hopefully the our facility from the facility we will able to send the birth notification to the birth and death issue information system, and I think that that it will act as a good step for the strengthening the birth registration. And another one, we taken the initiative that the involvement of the urban facilities. At least you know that the urban facility basically run by the NGOs. There is a no standard structure from the government side. Basically, the city corporation, basically they are providing the primary health care by the NGOs. So, and the NGOs basically they are able to provide their service for the five years duration. So, and after 5 years, again the another NGO may come. So, this is the one of the obstacle for continuation of the service from the for the urban peoples. So we are trying to involve the immunization program to link with the birth registration. So accordingly, the Dhaka South City Corporation, there is a one project is going on that during the immunization and tracking of the child, so that we can send the information to the birth and death issue information system. So this type of work is going on. And another one is that is our Professor Malavika Madam already mentioned that the unique ID for the development of the developing the unique ID. So we are taking an initiative for the child biometric and the immunization and the birth registration. So a research mm, we will do a research with the support from the Gavi and the ID 2020. So I think that another recommendation, that is the registration point. Basically, by the law and the act, there is a clearly mentioned that the registrar, that is the chairman of Union Parishad or the municipality mayor or the city corporation mayor, they are the registrar. But without the help of the notifying authority, that is also mentioned that the some in the law and the rules, there is a clearly mentioned the who will be the notifier. Basically, the family member is the notifier. It is clearly mentioned the family should notify all the events to the local register office within the 45 days of the event. But it is not clearly working, and basically it is failed. That is we are taking. We already give the got the information from this presentation that the 9% and influence, there is an influence of the health system, and the few percent from the family. So the other than the family members, basically they can act as a rule for the notifier. So and in the law and the act, they clearly mentioned that the registrar will take the initiative for the communication with the family members or oriented the family members that this event should be notified and should be registered within the 45 days. But at the registration office, basically this type of communication or the orientation of the family members, it is not working as properly. So the importance of the register, it is also important that they have to complete the registration. So notification, if we got the notification, and the completion of the registration and the distribution of the certificate. So there's a three activities is there. So if all the three activities are going in the same pace, then the registration will be complete. And if there is any hassle from the registration office to the community or to the citizen, then it will hamper our registration process. So that's the comments from my side. So thank you, and giving the opportunity me to say something regarding the birth registration and the importance of the health system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shafi. Now I would like to request Mr. Polash Kantibala, the Registrar General, Office of the Registrar General, Birth and Death Registration. You may consider the 9 questions.
Thank you, sir. Distinguished panelists and honorable participants in front of me, especially my senior sir, Asham Moshavashan Bhuya sir and Sajad Johiz. Welcome to all. First of all, I would like to thank Farah Nutun Farah Haq, sorry. She has explained very clearly and also dropped some question against me. I will mildly criticize her that when I after joining my office, I faced several journalists. They also asked me these types of questions several times. First, I faced that embarrassing situation also. I would like to explain myself as such a way that I am within Registrar General only 5 months ago, 30th January 2021. And several times I'm passing several types of questions and situations that embarrassed me in different way, in several ways. That is she asked about the registration process, why we need parents BRN, not NID. I will throw some question in front of my participants that can we add cat and dog at the same time? And we can add, but how can we explain? So 1 cat plus 1 dog, does it mean that 2 dogs, 2 cats? Never. So we need make it uniform in the same way. Since my system is developed on the basis of BRN, birth registration, for my system, it is the unique position for me, that is birth registration number or death registration number. So it's the system and also the software developer that developed this on the basis of that things, that is BRN. So BRN is the unique ID to identify if any persons within my system is the BRN. How can we define, add or choose NID to distinguish BRN? It's impossible. It's totally absurd on the basis of the mathematics. If we have simple elemental idea on the basis of mathematics, we never accept any differs within the system with the other system. So here's the question that we can't consider NID instead of BRN. Next, universal protocol about the language. Within my system, my forms includes Bengali side by side English. So English is the universal language in the world. So we are not avoiding English. You may raise some question about that. Within my system, within Bangladesh, I have 12 crore of data only within Bengali. There is the absence of English, and I have 40 lakh of registrations outside the Bangladesh. They have only English. It's the fault. But my software or my forms includes both side by side. It's not my default. It's the default when we put some data, when our user put data, only they consider the Bengali within the Bangladesh and English outside the Bangladesh. So within my software, within my rule, within my act, there is no discrepancy between Bengali and English. It accepted all, both. Well, next, third, overcharging. Say in front of me, I have my rule 2018. There is a charge within 45 days. We charge nothing. After 45 to 5 years, it charges only 25 taka. It's a penalty. And after 5 years, that is 25 taka, that is 50 taka. But it's the bad practice. They are getting something, taking the opportunity of the general peoples. That may not be the references we put in front of these types of fraud. It's the accusing things, it's the bad things. It might not be the references. We should resist them. In this context, I would express myself that is, in general, I say myself that I'm a general, but without weapon. I have 5,160 offices within country and abroad. Out of country, that is 55 offices, so registered officers, but I have no control. I have no manpower. Think about it, that my organization's organogram includes only 35 number of manpower. Out of 35, I have only 16 number of manpower. But my system possesses more than 20 crore of data. If I compare it with NID, they have only 11 crore of data. But what is the organogram of NID? It starts from Dhaka to Upojela, more than 5,000 of manpower, and structure more than 500. So I am in an embarrassing situation that I have only 16 number of manpower, but I am possessing 20 crore of data, more than 20 crore, and per day it is generating about 1,16,000 per day. So overcharging accusation against me.
No, it is not against you, but I think it is the fact. It is going on. We will have to identify these regions, and you.
Sir,
may
I do
like
agree.
that.
I
Yeah,
do agree,
okay.
sir. I do agree. But my act and my rule is not telling that to earn. It's bad practice, sir. Bad people are doing that. Well, next, time-consuming factor about to get some facilities from my software. I am in front of my BDRS software, and I can prove it. The time factor that Notun Farahog expressed in front of us, I'm not agreeing with her. Since I am here to prove that within a second, I can exhaust several number of applications, that is correcting applications abroad. So I think it's not completely in favor of me. Well, duplication is true. My system, my software is not able to distinguish the duplications inside the software. But within a few months ago, I started to inspect my offices, that is my registered offices. I found some things when it started 2016, manually the registration process. At that moment, some mistake has occurred place in earlier. due to indiscrepancy of the register books that was supplied from the project period. So within my software, there are few numbers of mistaking or in wrong information or duplication within my system, but it's the duplications that generated when it was started manually. Well, I'm going in fast since he is showing me that I have only a few minutes. Next, correction process. Within the correction process, I will say that correction process is not so very complicated things inside my within my software. It's the system that only the correcting elements that will be inserted within the my software end, and it will be accepted by the register office. Then it will forwarded to my correcting authorities, as for example, EONOS, and in the case of Union Parishad, it will be considered by EONOS, and in the case of Pauro Sabha, Cantonment Board, and City Corporation, it will be considered by the DC or DDLG. And outside the country, I face that kinds of correction. But it's not so complicated or not so embracing or time-consuming factor. It's very few hours or within the required period of time, it can be dissolved. But so for this one, I'm not in this point that correction process pending more. But it's the truth that within my country, I personally took some attention in that case. At that moment, the number was 63 lakhs, total number of correction pending within the country and abroad. Within that number, 9 lakhs were pending around EONOS and DGLs, and 54 lakhs were pending around within the 5,105 number of officers. I, in average, divided that numbers. I found that each number of registered officers, they have only 900 number of applications, but there are several types of applications there. So if I divide 900 by 8, it's only 100 number of applications they are
Okay, Mr. Balla, I think you will be getting more chance during question answer session. Now you can conclude. Maybe as the time is up, you can conclude.
Well. Thank you, sir. Since I am facing that kinds of questions from several corners. For this reason, I am explaining it clearly what types of problem I am facing and how the constraint I have within my systems and my organograms. So it's my answering within that session, since the time is.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sabir Mahmood, please.
Hello. So first of all, in last 12 years, while working with CRVS is not only birth registration, it's birth, death, marriage, divorce, migration in, out, and adoption. So my experience, I have had experience with, I think, 5-6 registered general, and then NID, DGs, couple of them, and then a lot of marriage registration registrars and all. My understanding is not a technological issue. It's more of a mindset issue. Is as a government failing to see the entire process and the citizen perspective from the bird's eye view. So when we have a meeting, all the agencies will get together and they will keep talking about their jurisdiction, their authority, their process, and failing to see what citizen has to go through in such processes. So it's not a technology issue. The technology issue only comes in when we talk about child and infant biometrics. So for last 2 years, along with Gavi and ID2020, we have searched almost the entire world whether there are technology exists which will work at a population grade and have enough longitudinal data to protect us, let's say 20 or 30 years down the line. So, but a lot of, I would say, promising technologies are coming in, and that's why Gavi, DGHS, A2I, and Health and ID2020, they all came together to research some of these technologies, promising technologies in next 1 to 2 years. About using technology to digitize the EPI process so that the birth registration success will be higher. One of the big reason we did not walk that path was, I think, last 5, 6, 7 years, we talked about it. One of the biggest problem was the time it would take to register, to go through a birth registration and then go through the immunization was quite unrealistic. It will compromise the immunization process itself. So that was one of the reasons we did not walk that path. Now, in terms of uniquely identifying our children, yes, we can use parents' unique identification and attach it with children identification, because it's pretty simple. If you have one number, which might not be unique, and then one number which is unique, if you join together, you get a unique number. So yeah, that part works. But one of the biggest problem we face is when we walk into a government process, they try to overgeneralize everything. It's like they have to have a process which is one size fits all. So we try to fit in all different scenarios in one process, and that's why we fail all the time. We don't realize that different group of people have different needs, and therefore we need to have different process to manage them. So when we fail to see that and we try to bring in all the real life complexities into one process, we end up like a complex process like birth registration itself we face right now. Because no matter who says what, I went through birth registration a couple of months back, and I know how complex it is. So having said that, I think that if we take the technology off and look at the process, look at how different agencies, like I can remember it took me 8 years to get NID authority and birth registration work together. Health and local government, which is birth registration, work together. It took years, but it should not. If we look at from the rational thinking of ours, it should not. So now, but let's just say the reality, that's how we are. Because I have seen when the role changes between the agencies, the person changes altogether. I don't know why it is happening. It's maybe our senior the cabinet division secretary can shed some light on it, why this happens, but we have seen that. Now, but the good thing is, going forward, these three agencies agreed to do things together. Now we are stuck at the interoperability level. In terms of software, cannot take the load of current requirement. If you look at the math that the Registrar General was talking about, 120,000 registration per day, does that means that 200 to 300, 2 to 3 crore children are born per year in Bangladesh? It does not. So clearly there are re-registration is happening within the system a lot. Now, what happens is a lot of the time, we don't look at these requirements when we build the software. Because if you take the simple math from our population, you build a system with 3.5 million to 5 million registration per year, you divide it by the month and you get a load. Now, I think we are operating almost 10 times that load. So I wonder whether that is factored in when they build the system. And if we look at the second part of it, is since we made the process so complex, definitely the queries that run this software is also became quite complex, because all those variables are now factored into those registration engines that might also slow down the system. But I think the vertical integration, vertical scaling the system might solve those problems. So in conclusion, I would say that it is, again, it's not a technology issue. It's a process, mindset, and understanding issue. And I think if we all have the citizen perspective in mind, as the presenter said so, if we take that as a constant and as a de facto for our decision making, we can solve these problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we shall go to the question and answer segment of the session. But before that, I would like to address 3-4 issues as presented in the beginning. First of all, the parents' birth registration. What Mr. Polashkanti Bala tried to make it clear that parents' birth registration for a family tree is needed. It's the ideal condition. But given this situation, very recently, Cabinet Division has given the decision that the NID will do. That is the parents' national identification number. That document will be that will work. For the first answer, the answer of the first question is that NID is being considered from now for registration of the child. The second issue is correction process. We are going to amend the rules where what Registrar General mentioned that for correction after 90 days of registration, it goes to the upper level. So only for correction of birth date, it will be retained with the higher authority, that is either with the UN Upazila Nirbahi officer or with the deputy commissioner. Other than this birth date, other correction will be done by the registration authority. So this is the issue being incorporated in the amendment proposal. The third issue is challenges of early birth registration. It's really a challenge. Parents are not interested. They are not at all interested. They want to have the facility. If the child fails to be admitted in a school once or twice, then he or she will be trying for more. And that is why they are not interested to register at birth. For this, very recently, there is an, we must say, something like one innovation that we are encouraging our registrars to work with the health workers in the field. In the, there is a task force in different level, union, upazila, district, and divisional level also. In the task force meeting, the health officials in the union level, they will be providing the, as they are equipped with all the information, they will be providing the expected date of delivery to the register. Based on that, the registration authority will be issuing a congratulatory letter to the family that we congratulate you. You are getting a new a newborn in your. We are getting a guest in your family. We congratulate you. We are sending a registration card, birth registration form with this. Please fill it up after the birth. So that we'll be collecting from you with our village police. This has been practiced in Narayanganj, Joshore, and all districts of Rajshahi division and getting very good result. Village polices are involved with this. They will be collecting the, they will be providing the congratulatory letter with the form, and after birth, they will be collecting this. With this, we are addressing the challenges of early birth registration. Of course, it is, we will have to work with the health facilities, and Dr. Ashraf is here. We are working together. And connection with immunization. It's an opportunity. We are trying to do that in with the few amendments and within a very short period, almost all the questions mentioned here will be addressed very soon. So with this note, I would like to request, I would like to open the question answer session. You may ask question, you can have the microphone. Yeah.
Hello. Is this on? It is? Okay. Hi, my name is Rizwan. I was your MC. I was not born in Bangladesh. My parents were, and I don't live in Bangladesh. I guess how are efforts for unique identification and birth registration moving forward for members of the Bangladeshi diaspora and other foreign-born Bangladeshis?
So in Bangladesh, we are citizenship by parent citizenship. So yes, you can do birth registration from abroad, but to have a unique ID from the NID authority, you have to prove that either parents have a valid NID. So that's the policy.
Well, I mean, my question isn't like how to do that. It's more so there is an exclusion error already in Bangladesh, and that exclusion error is even more profound when it comes to Bangladeshis born outside of Bangladesh. How are efforts to actually include these Bangladeshis into the many services that rely upon NID and birth registration numbers and so forth? How are they actually going to include thousands of Bangladeshis that live outside of Bangladesh who are entitled to these services, but don't actually have, national ID or birth registration?
The thing is, I don't think it's exclusion, because first you need to prove that you are from Bangladesh, your parents are from Bangladesh. So I think the exclusion, we can call it exclusion if we block any Bangladeshis from availing the NID, or block you or your parents. But other than that, why you are calling it an exclusion, I have no idea. Because, for example, you want to avail a service, land registration, you must have a NID card, right? So that is process, and I think I know a lot of people who already gone through the process and avail the NID card, and thus can do it, and also the birth registration. So I don't see the exclusion part.
I guess my question at large is more towards the fact that with me personally, the vast majority of people who have immigrated from Bangladesh outside, many of them have done before birth registration was in place. Many of them have done so before 2004 and before other measures for unique identification. So how could you possibly include all of those people as well as their children who are also Bangladeshi nationals?
I think you mean what government should do proactively to reach them out and include them.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that whether the process was missing or not. Proactively,
Bangladeshis already gave up Bangladeshi passport and hold the foreign passport. So what Bangladesh government also need to think that is there any particular reason to include them as a non-resident Bangladeshi, which will be useful for Bangladesh. At the same time, for those non-resident Bangladeshi having non-Bangladeshi passport also need to think that why they want to be registered. So it's more policy level. And I don't think it's not the emotional, it's more pragmatic and to identify the usefulness of that process. Yeah.
আমার কোশ্চেনটা, আই থিঙ্ক এভরিবডি স্পিক্স বাংলা এখানে। আগেরটার ব্যাপারে তো বাইরের কারো জন্ম হলে পরে এমবাসি থ্রু দিয়ে রেজিস্ট্রেশন করে, এটা হচ্ছে নর্মাল প্র্যাকটিস থাকে যদি পাসপোর্টের ব্যাপার থাকে। আর you have online, so you want English. Okay. একটু sorry. Basically, for those Bangladeshi citizens who have children abroad, the children get registered with the embassies in order to register. And that provision, I think, is there in the system. The question possibly is for those who are born here, later on go out with their parents or by themselves and become citizens of other countries. And what do they do? And I think Dr. Malovika had one answer to that. I mean, if you forego your citizenship, then there is a bigger policy issues that possibly goes beyond this floor. So I'll not get into that. I have a question to Mr. Sabir Mahbub, is the software part, which is again a technology issue, remains. I mean, you did explain the issue of the number game. I mean, what capacity, now you have to do more than what is actually needed because there is this 90 plus old generation registering for their birth. Can that be separated and managed? That's my first question. I mean, the second question relates to the language. I didn't get an answer to the language issue. I mean, I understand that now you have trace-tracked doing almost 80% of the OCR from Bangla. And my understanding is at least that attempt should be made to actually have interoperability between these two languages. Or the least that you can accommodate is the parents may have a Bangla certificate if needed. I mean, obviously now that NID is, you have accommodated NID with the new cabinet rule. That means I can register mine in English and my father's or mother's name in Bangla. And there must be ways to accommodate that. And I don't know why it's not happening. And finally, I wonder, this software development part, is it all in-house activity or is it a mega software that we borrowed and we are trying to temper that? We mostly do it web develop, sorry to be so nasty, but it's actually, I mean, this is a mega thing which will be there for centuries, I mean, for this country. So each country must have its own control over the technology that we use. In this particular area, for sure, we need that. Is there any attempt to actually make sure that we get into that kind of track? That's basically the questions. I mean, the questions that Nuton raised for Mr. Palash Kantibala were not actually meant for you in particular. So don't take any offense, please. It's more to raise the issues. And those were genuine concerns of citizens. And obviously we understand that the registrar is not responsible for everything, it's the whole system. Somehow we are, and it would be good to know what kind of rules are coming down the road so that we can feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the question about the software. From A to I, we actually only provided the architecture, and local government went through a procurement process and end up with a vendor, and then they built it. So I think there are quite a few issues there as well. Right now, it looks like that it's not scaling. That's all I can say. It has scalability issues, and also birth registration have few infrastructural issues. That's according to my understanding. But even if I look at numbers, it should not happen. That's true, because 20 million rows of data is not big data. It's like a bank 1 month operation is same number of transaction happens. I believe that the vendor who built the software, they did not follow the proper architecting of the solution. And that's where we are getting into trouble. That's one thing. Same thing is, if you look at the language barrier, I don't know where it is coming from, but my understanding from the presentation is If parents is in English, I get the English. If it's Bangla, I get the Bangla. I think that can be an issue of the transliteration. So if my name in the system is AK SABB IR management, there is no one who typed it to Bangla into AK Shabir Mahbub. Hence, since they are linked, so then that they cannot issue a Bengali certificate from my English parents' data. But I cannot think of any other issues. I think the birth registration system designers need to answer that. That can be one issue. But there are technologies these days, I'm sure that this can be managed efficiently without any problem. But again, I have to have the mindset to solve it.
Thank you. I would like to respond a bit on the language issue. The rule says that the certificate will have to be in both the languages, English and Bengali, Bangla. But our people at the early stage of registration, they thought that why English is needed, Bangla is enough. In the same way, our registration officials abroad, they thought that English is enough, no Bangla is needed. So now we are going to change the system. One single language will do, and it will be, if it is in Bangla, then translation in English, it will be no cost. Our suggestion is like this, with no cost, and henceforth it will be in two languages. In the earlier stages where the single language is there, it will be automatically translated, or easiest process will be followed for this to address this issue. Regarding from the Zoom platform, we got two questions. Let me answer it. How would digital birth registration be linked to marriage registration? It is already linked. Birth registration, it is a provision during the marriage registration. The birth registration certificate will have to be shown. Of course, there are some bad practices, but we are trying to address this issue from now onwards. The duplication process will be addressed, and without showing any proper birth registration, no marriage registration will have to be there. The government is taking some steps in this regard. And could it be used to discourage child marriage? Yes, it is for discouraging the child marriage. The next question is, will the panel respond? Will the panel respond to the aspect of inclusion of street children? The law is very clear here. The register is bound to register each and every people under his or her jurisdiction, even street children, without any identity, any children. The law is very strong here, but it is due to practice. Many, the challenge Mr. Bala was trying to mention, more than 5,000 offices having at least double officials. One is the registrar and the registration assistant. More than 10,000. The training is a very big issue. We could not provide sufficient training because a lot of changes are there, retirement, transfer, posting, everything is there. So the government is trying to introduce a project for proper training of this, and through training this can be addressed. As the law and rules is very much clear that we are bound to register each and every people living here, a person living here or born here. Even there is another issue, the Rohingya issue. Law is also very much clear. We have to register them, but there is a lack of understanding. We will have to work on it. So these are the questions. Do you want to add? Yeah.
I have the one comments regarding the street children. So in the rules 2018, it is clearly mentioned that if there is a no identity, in that case, in the system, it's mentioned that is this information is not applicable. So so fill upping this step, so the street children or the others, those who have the no identity, they can register. And it is clearly mentioned in the rules and the act that if I stated in the Bengali, that if I stated in the Bengali, that is the কোনো ব্যক্তি এতিম প্রতিবন্ধী তৃতীয় লিঙ্গের ব্যক্তি পিতৃ মাতৃ পরিচয়হীন বেদে ভবগুড়ে পথবাসী অথবা ঠিকানাহীন নিবন্ধক তথ্যের ঘাটতির কারণে উক্ত ব্যক্তি জন্ম বা মৃত্যু নিবন্ধন প্রত্যাখ্যান করিতে পারিবেন না এবং এই সকল ক্ষেত্রে যে সকল তথ্য অসম্পূর্ণ থাকিবে সে সকল স্থানে অপ্রাপ্য শব্দ লিখিয়া জন্ম ও মৃত্যু নিবন্ধন করিতে হইবে। It is clearly mentioned if for the registration of the all citizen in the Bangladesh. So there is and by this clause, it is the one of the example of the equity. So and that there is no discrepancy of the inequality. Thank you.
Yes, so adding to that point, we did understand that the law is there, but when I look into we are talking about the digital solution here, right? The birth registration system is like an old system which not been fully digitalized before, but now it's a website. Through that website, we need to register. And when you try to register, when the applicant try to register, they need to enter their parents' birth registration ID. And then if the birth registration ID is there in the server, they unlinked with the NID, then the information will be fetched. Without filling out this step, you cannot proceed to the next page. So the question was just onto the digital website that is currently in practice. So about street children, what it used to be earlier, that there was in the manual system, we can keep that part just unavailable, right? But in the digital system, the website, you cannot go beyond that page, the second steps. You cannot go beyond that second step. So that's the question.
If I could understand your question, where the parents are unknown, it is the system says that in generally one citizen can apply for registration or something like that. It is an exception where the parents are unknown. In that case, the applicant will have to go to the office, that is the registrar's office. Then it will be a check or something like that, then it can be.
Right. So, sir, if I understand well, so that process is still manual in a sort of way, right?
He or she will have to be present in the office of the registrar, then they will be entering into this. Just to keep a check here, it is the registration is full digitalized, we must say.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's really great to know, because whatever we have presented today was prepared depending on the references that has already showed you, the news articles coming up, and a lot of NGO workers are actually raising this issue because they didn't know this.
Yeah.
So now I think from this conference and from this session, they are much clearer
Okay.
that in which way they can register.
Thank you.
So thank you
What
very
our
much.
Registrar General says. Yeah.
And the thing that contest that in the case of NID or BRN, my system also allows, without putting the BRN or NID of his or her mothers or parents, my system also accept that is also, there is no embargo within my software. But it will create a problem that if we don't make any family tree within the family, say son, mother, sons, and others, that will be another problem. In the case of under 18, my ORG, that is ORG and NID, we are in MU with NID that will produce UID for the children under 18. So in that case, I told it earlier that we need a family tree. So at that situation, we imposed that we need, first of all, DRN, next NID.
Right.
But without that element, that DRN and NID, we also generate restriction. There is no embargo within my system.
Can I add two questions? I understand. I understand that that is the end target. Eventually, you want to go there, but there may be a transitional phase between BR gradually tying it with the NID thing. My first question is why? I mean, somebody remarked that because it's going to take time. I think Mr. Sabir is going to take time for the birth registration to gain completeness. So for the time being, NID, I mean, you try to rely more on NID. But that doesn't, I mean, only restriction that you suggest is because people would like to show the children's age, less than what actually they are. And that incentive comes purely from the employment issues, the government employment. Has anyone done a cost benefit analysis of, completely getting away with this kind of age limit for government employment? I mean, what is the cost? What is the benefit? If that is the only reason why parents tend to linger, not registered births, I mean, that's what you said, then there can be a cost assessment. And my understanding is government doesn't lose anything by relaxing that age limit issue for employment. That's question one. Regarding the limited capacity of the registrar's office, has there been any thought in tying it with the UDC services so that the registrar can actually get some additional support? Just a question.
Now, actually, mainly it is done by the Union Parishad office. Union Parishad has one official, namely the Secretary Union Parishad. He is the one having lot of activities. Sometimes he does not have time to do this time-consuming activity. But government has decided to create a post there, namely the position is computer operator, accounts assistant come computer operator. In most of the cases, the position is created and filled up, so they are working well. But where the secretary is alone, we have some limitations, and also they are working with the we call it Union Digital Center. They are supporting it, but sometimes some sort of corruption is also there. So the law says that the password or the key will be given to the person under a regular payroll. So it creates some problem, but gradually it is being shifted to the government officials, hopefully in very near future. And there are some court cases also against the recruitment of this position, because the persons who are the entrepreneurs, they're called the entrepreneurs in the digital center of they lost cases in the court. So it takes time to resolve all this, and gradually we'll be having the second person in the offices that will ease the life of the people. They will be able to do that.
I'd like to add something. Last 10th April, I raised one questions in front of my Honorable Minister, Local Government Division. Sorry. I put some statistics in front of that floor that in 1971, the population of Bangladesh was 7 crore 10 lakh. And I calculated CBR and CDR, crude birth rate and crude death rate from BBS, where I found from 1971 to 2021, I found 15 crore 27 lakhs people, though people, that number of people, they are might born within that period, that is 50 years. And within that period, 4 crore 80 lakhs people should have death in this time. So if I add 7 crore 10 lakh, 15 crore 27 lakh, and 4 crore 80 lakh, it amounts to 27 crore 33 lakhs. But at that moment, my registration number was only 19 crore. And it was the time, January 2022, when I joined several types of meetings. I was faced some embarrassing questions. Since the population within the country is 16 crore 70 lakh, but registrations number exceeds more than the existing people. But after analyzing that things, that at that moment, my registration rate was around 70% all over the country. So in that case, I found one challenge. Out of 4 crore 80 lakhs of death, only registrations occurred 20 lakhs. It is the challenge for us. I raised that question in front of my honorable minister. And from that time, since another question, this per day, the number of registrations is taking its place 1,16,000. I think someone may arise some questions that why the so big number of registrations is going on. Within this year, say if I calculate that CDR, it amounts to 30 lakhs from the existing people of Bangladesh, and CDR, it amounts to 8.5 lakhs. So total number of registrations within this year should have only 38.5 lakhs. But the late registrations is now taking place, since the 30% out of 27 crore 33 lakh till now pending. For this reason, when we are passing the COVID-19 in the year 2021, the remarkable changes has occurred within my registration process. Before that time, only 60 lakh, 70 lakhs number of registrations was taking place. But in 2021, it has taken its jump from 60 lakh to 1 crore 49 lakh. Now, within this year, I'm thinking that it will exceed more than 2 crore. Since that number is, for this reason, the challenges within my registration sites, only the death registrations. How can we make it sure that number of registrations within that year and the previous number of huge number of lag behinding, I think the registrations is now, we don't know about that amount to 4 crore 60 lakh. Only the success within our side, that my honorable senior sir expressed that our success within the registrations, only the birth registrations. If I calculate it from 2010, when I started our online processes within the country, from that to 2020 first, that it amounts to 12 years. Within 12 years, our achievement is around 30%. But if we calculate it from 1873, when the first law was enacted, within 2024, it amounts to 131 years. At that moment, our achievement was only 8%.
So
No, it's okay. I think comparing with that time is not maybe
So, sir,
not so
I'm
relevant.
telling the
Okay,
only
you
our
please.
achievement in the case of registrations, in the case of birth, but in the case of death, we are very much lag behind from that point.
No,
It's a huge
very,
number.
very recently, no,
Uh,
no, very recently the scenario changed. We talked much about birth registration, but death registration is also important. Very recently, government has issued a circular that there will be no succession certificate from the registers unless there is any uh, online death registration. For that, it jumped, particularly in the last quarter of 2021, the death registration was more than birth registration within 1 year of occurrence. Of course, there are delayed registration, but with the SCOP targets and also with the SDG targets, we are counting within 45 days of occurrence, one count, and the next count is within 1 year of occurrence. We don't count the delayed registration for having the targets. And another news I want to mention here, message I want to give here, my honorable former cabinet secretary is present here. During his time, the government introduced the government performance management system. Very recently, birth and death registration is included in the GPMS, Government Performance Management System, meaning that the deputy commissioners and the Upazila and Nirbhay officers will have to attend a certain percentage. This year it is 50% of birth registration and 25% of death registration within 1 year of occurrence. The next year it is 80% and 40%. And in the third year, which is the closing year of CRBS decade, 2024, they will have to reach 100% birth registration and at least 50% death registration within 1 year of occurrence. That will be a driving force. Hopefully, we will be able to address all these issues within that period, as it is included in the annual performance agreement. Every year it is counted, and with the after 30th June, there will be an assessment which district has done at what level performance is there. So with the introduction of these in the annual performance agreement, there will be, we expect a very big breakthrough here in birth and death registration. I think we are close to the end. If any question from any, maybe the, no questions. So any remarks from you from your side?
Regarding the death registration, so the female death registration and the kids, that is the children death registration, is very, very low, as because they have the no wealth, no bank account, no work station. So that the initially the CRBS decade in the 2016, government decided that the initially that the 80% death will be registered by 2024. But at the mid of the decade, our experiences, then it reduced to the 50% death. It should be registered by the 2024. So accordingly, the government basically working, and for the death registration, for the notification of the death from the facility as well as the community, our health system basically they are working on it. And as because the when the death occurred, the facility and the community worker, they know instantly, and accordingly they are basically they are influencing the family members to register this date in the systems. So this is the for the death registration. So obviously the civil registration, from the part of the civil registration, birth registration is the important, as because this is the identity of the kids of that nation. Thank you.
So from the technology end, I would say that yes, lately, thanks to Cabinet Division, they have brought all the actors together, all the stakeholders together, and try to solve the issues between their systems and their processes. I think if we can expedite that, we will see great results going forward.
So one experience, the last comment from my side, that we did the COVID-19 vaccine management system, that is the Shurakha. In the so system is not the issue. At that we have the experience that in one day we vaccinated the more than 10 million people in one day, and most of the most of the citizens are registered in the Shurakha. So system is not the issue. So issue is business process is the important, and if we follow the rules and regulation and accordingly we develop the system, then the systems will run accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Once again, I would like to thank the authorities for including this session to our consideration. It is very important because the government is going to amend the acts and rules on birth and death registration. So if the summary of discussion of this session goes to the government, particularly to Mr. Bala, that will be very helpful for the question, the answers, and the issues raised here. That will be very helpful. And probably the deadline of submitting the draft is 20th July. Mr. Bala will have to submit the amendment proposal to the government within 20th July. So before that, we think we will be getting the inputs from this session. That will be very helpful for us. I would like to conclude the session by thanking you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for a very insightful panel. We are ending the conference for today. We will pick up again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. here at the Brack Center in auditorium. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.